Persistence is a key feature in some Node-RED applications. Let me give you two examples on how to save your values or share your values with other things. So the first example is using MQTT. Let's say that we have a switch and we have a text box, and we want this data to persist on reboot or deploying. So in order to do that, we're going to use MQTT. The key setting that really makes this work is on the MQTT out node, we set retain to true, and we can set the quality of service up to something higher. But this tells the MQTT server that it wants it to save it. Even if MQTT reboots, when it comes back up, it will still have the same values. And when these MQTT in objects subscribe, they will get those values. So for instance, this one's going to subscribe to a thing called demo/bool, and when it gets it, it's going to pass it to this toggle button you can see on the dashboard. We don't really need it to pass it to the output again. We don't need it to write twice. That is handy in some cases, but we just want it to make this visually look right, and it'll toggle it to whatever state it's in. But of course, whenever you toggle the button, it goes ahead and sends the payload to the same topic and writes it back out. Now here's a slightly different example, and sometimes you may need to combine both of these. Context basically sets the values into a variable in the Node-RED memory. There is different context, so you could have a context where it's only shared within the function or within the flow tab or globally with every flow in Node-RED. Since it's the simplest to just go with global, that's the example I'm going to give here. And the example is we have a button, or we have something going on and we want to be able to enable or disable it. I'm going to go ahead and enable it. You can watch the timestamp and you'll see that it starts updating. Disable it and it no longer works. So this is going to use global context. So we have a simple button. It's just triggering the function. That's all it's doing. The function says, hey, if the toggle button is switched to 1, we're going to go ahead and write to the global variable called enable, and this is just something we came up with. You can have as many as you like, and we're going to write it true. Otherwise, we're going to set that global variable to 0. So now, whenever we push the go button, it goes in here and it looks. First, we define a variable for our internal calculations, and we set it to this global.get enable. So we've just gotten the value, and if it is enabled, we're going to go ahead and allow the message to travel through to the text box and to the debug window. So it's important to note that this context doesn't necessarily save if you reboot your server. This may be fine, but if you need it to persist even on reboot, you may need to also incorporate MQTT as well.